Okay, let's have our seats. We're about to start. Opening the South Maui Community Plan Advisory Committee meeting at 5:30 p.m. And let's start with a roll call, as usual.
Thank you, Chair. Chair Rob Weltman. Vice Chair Daniel Kanahele. Okay. Tova Calendar. Everett Dowling.
Here.
Okay. Lehua is excused. Vernon Kalanikau. Randall Leach. Here. Mike Moran. Cody Nemeth. Wayne Nishiki. Here. There you are. Kyoki Felter is excused. Jennifer Sullivan. And Brian Ward will be in later. Thank you. And Daniel, I just want to confirm you are here. Thank you. I see you. Hi, Daniel.
Okay. Vilina mai na lalo ke komike o lalo o kai ulo no ka papa ho lala no Maui hama. Vilina mai no ho I ka po e o ke ena ho lala o ke kalana o Maui. A me ka leho leho o Maui ne. E ho o paha kako I ke yahi yahi. I ke ana ho o hana ana I ka a pana o ki he hama a vailea I ka vai I ke mai ai. So today we'll be working on land use designations for sub-area 3, which is Central and South Kihei, and at least starting on sub-area 4, Wailea. There's some other microphone that's making a lot of noise. Someone maybe turn off that microphone? It's coming in from Blue Jeans? Okay. So we have two topics today, and so we'll be taking testimony public testimony now on the first topic, which is sub-area 3, Central and South Kihei. Could I have our first testifier?
Thank you. All right. Whoa. Karen. Okay. Good evening, Chair and committee members. My name is Leilani Pomano of Pacific Rim Land, representing the landowner of the Maui Research Technology Park. And as I presented to the committee on April 19th, and in our written testimony, we asked the community plan designation for the park to be special purpose district. First, and most importantly, the park's land use designation is consistent now. The current community plan designation is Maui Research Technology Park, and our zoning is Maui Research and Technology Park District. We have constructed and are processing ministerial permits in compliance with our current community plan and zoning, all to say that the park is in development. Second, the special purpose district is for lands that, quote, do not easily fall within one or a combination of the other community plan designations due to their uniqueness or incompatibility, end quote. The park zoning is unique and doesn't easily match the community plan designations. So the best fit is special purpose district. Third, the park's zoning has 38 permitted uses within the 5 zoning sub-districts. These uses don't match any of the proposed community plan designations. Let's just take one example shown on the recommended map for small town center. Our residential zoning district is being designated small town center. Our question is, does small town center allow for the same uses that are permitted in our residential zoning district? such as retail, likely. Restaurants, maybe. Manufacturing, maybe not. Light industrial, technical industries, scientific industries, medical, satellites, parking structure, substations, renewable energy systems, utility facilities, pharmaceutical research and production research laboratories, all maybe not. Our zoning is unique, and its best fit is within the special purpose district. Fourth, most of the new community plan designations require the council to establish development and design standards, which the park zoning already has. The council could establish conflicting development standards with the park's zoning. In a special purpose district, the development standards in the park zoning would prevail. So for all of these reasons, we ask the committee to recommend special purpose district for the park. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions to the testifier? Vernon?
That special district, is there unlimited use?
Well, it doesn't have a specific uses in the special purpose district designations as I understand it. But because our zoning is already set with all of these uses that are allowed or not allowed, it would allow our current zoning to prevail.
Because you guys already get permits already for moving forward, so it's kind of like on mixed plate,
Yes,
Kapakai kind of
Right.
zone use you have up there, right?
right.
So this special purpose district, is it one of those that it's like open season, you guys can do whatever you like up there?
Not necessarily because again, our zoning tells us what we can do in terms of land uses.
Yeah.
So if you were to want to look at what is allowed, you would go to the zoning code. And it's already codified in 19.38.
Yeah, thank you.
Everett?
Are there any other projects on Maui that have similar zoning to Maui Research Technology Park?
I don't believe so. We were the first form-based code, and so it just takes all of our special uses and the way how the sub-districts are allowed uses within each sub-district. It's very unique.
Okay, thank you.
Vernon?
So yeah, you guys can put on airport too, yeah? Maybe.
No,
No?
because our permitted uses don't allow for airport.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Any other clarifying
Good
questions?
to have that on record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier. Just before you start, Rory, how many testifiers do we have online? Just one. Okay. Go ahead, Rory.
Thank you. Rory Frampton here on behalf of Haleakala Ranch. When we're requesting that the area above the Kihei wastewater reclamation facility be designated as industrial to recognize existing uses of the area and to recognize the appropriateness of the area for expansion of similar types uses. So the area, we did include some maps in my testimony. Again, it's above the Goodfellow Base Yard and it's above the wastewater treatment plant. To the north is the LAR Golf Course, and to the south is the Bayer Monsanto facility. The existing area doesn't contain any unique or special resources. The rationale in support of the request is that, it's abutting existing industrial uses. It's not located near sensitive uses such as residential housing. It's not visible from Pi'ilani Highway. The designation would recognize the nature of the existing uses of a portion of the property. And it would recognize the suitability of the area for future, what we call back of the house type operations. Any future use that's not outright permitted in the ag district would require approval via a special permit or a conditional permit or a change in zoning. So there would be, this is not a blank check, there will be further discretionary review and approvals. And although it's outside of the Maui Island Plan urban growth boundary, the Maui Island Plan did recognize that there are certain land uses that may be unique and due to the nature of the use might be more appropriately located outside of the identified urban growth boundaries. And I've included that language in my testimony. So in summary, we're just requesting the industrial designation to reflect the nature of the existing uses and the appropriateness of the area for future similar type uses. And I would add that Pete Sullivan is also here today. He's with Hawaii Materials Recycling, one of the users of the facility, and he's going to explain a little bit about their operations as well.
Any questions, clarifying questions? So I have one. When I just did a ballpark estimate of the size of the current industrial activity there, and I got it to about 30 acres. So how large is the area that you're asking for?
The total area is about 100.
So going from a 30 to 100?
Yes.
Thank you. Mike?
Thanks for being here so often, Rory. I agree with what you said, what's there. It certainly all fits together. But when we look at the description, it also starts off with the word manufacturing. Do you see any potential that we would have manufacturing at that location?
No, I don't anticipate that, no.
Mahalo.
Wayne had a question?
Rory, last week you said you were going to talk to your landowner. Have you spoken with them?
Yes, but it wasn't about this area. This is a totally different area than what we were talking about last week.
I understand.
Mm-hmm.
When are you guys coming back?
Possibly next week.
Is that true?
Any other clarifying questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Hi, I'm Pete Sullivan from Hawaii Materials Recycling. As Rory mentioned, we are located on Haleakala Ranch land, just Mauka of the Kihei wastewater treatment facility. We presently operate under a special use permit granted to us by the County of Maui. The intent of my testimony is to express my support for the land to be included in the community plan from agricultural to industrial. Our facility's proximity to the wastewater treatment facility allows us to easily utilize R1 water for dust suppression and moisture conditioning of soil before it leaves our site. This is much less expensive than using potable water and allows for the best use of our natural resources. Since our opening in June of 2018, we have diverted from the landfill or avoided possible fugitive dumping of 485,000 tons of inert materials such as concrete, rock, asphalt, and dirt. That equates to about 1 billion pounds, just shy. The cost to create landfill space is about $58.80 per ton. So at 485,000 tons diverted from the landfill, our facility has saved us as taxpayers about over $28 million in creating landfill space. It's diverted 22,000 semi-dump truck loads from the landfill. Hawaii Materials Recycling recycled the asphalt that came from the new roundabout on Pi'ilani Highway, supplied various contractors at Kulani Hakoi High School with products such as topsoil, road base, pipe bedding, and backfill material, and recycled a substantial amount of the project's concrete washout. We have offered to the contractors and indirectly the state of Hawaii to accept the approximate 60,000 cubic yard pile of rock and dirt that is piled in the next phase of the project for free. We have the desire and the ability to recycle green waste, food waste, and sewer sludge on this property if we are able to get proper entitlements of the land. Without proper zoning, to work under a special use permit and or conditional use permit is very risky as a business. I hope the content of this testimony helps everyone to understand the important role of promoting recycling in our community and how a collaborative approach with business, landowners, and our local government and the community can result in utilizing land and our resources for the highest and best use. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to express my opinion.
Thank you. Any questions? Mike?
Mahalo for coming, Pete. I had the privilege when you were first opened of getting a tour of your facility, and you've certainly lived up to what you said you were going to do. There was a lot of misconception about it. Do you see a true chance for expansion? You mentioned that there were other things you could do if you could get entitlements. Do you see that as a realistic possibility in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Our intent is to create a sustainability complex within that property. As Rory mentioned, that 100 acres that he's talking about, there's only so much of that we'd be allowed to use, or they'd be allowed to use anyway. And in order to recycle, say, sewer sludge, which is all being landfilled presently, we could recycle it right there on that property. I mean, potentially we could with the approval from Department of Health. Food waste is the same thing. We could create energy there, renewable energy. And your question about would there be manufacturing there? Well, right now we're manufacturing products all day long, and it's keeping that 485,000 tons is something that would have came out of the quarries. So, yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Everett?
Thanks for being here. The renewable energy and some of the other opportunities that you just mentioned, they sound fairly capital intensive. Would it be possible using a special use permit for you to get a long-term loan to invest the money into something that capital intensive?
That's a great question, Everett. That's one of the things that makes it risky. With a special use permit, it for us to go to the bank, I've already spoken to bank or hard money people, and people just aren't interested in that. We need to have something that people can count on, that you can say, hey, this is our land, somebody can't pull this away from you. Yeah, the big problem trying to get capital to do that. We funded our thing when we did it all by ourselves. It was $750,000, and that didn't include any equipment or anything. That was just consultants and preparation of the land and all that, and we did that out of pocket. So beyond that, it'd be tough to do more without a bank's. And you're right. Almost is a no way to get that without that being properly entitled.
Any other questions? Vernon?
Any chance you introduce this idea to Office of Innovation and Sustainability?
I don't even know what that is.
What was the other one? They changed the name, the other name from last year. Sustainable. They just changed it in this administration. Yeah, they're into this stuff. Yeah, so I'll get you information and you go make the calls and.
Sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, because they're into this stuff. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Any other clarifying questions? Thank you.
Okay.
Let's take the one on the blue jeans, and then we'll go back to this room. Barbara Knox.
I'm trying to unmute my camera. Okay, it doesn't want to unmute, so I guess I'll just testify orally. I would like to request that the portion of Waipuilani Gulch from the drainage from the Tialani Highway to South Kihei Road, including the area known as Fong's Gulch, be classified as open space. The reason for this is that this is an area that needs to remain an open space for protection of our community, to allow space for water to spread out. This gulch is part of our natural infrastructure, and it's a large area. It's more than just, the gulch is not like channelized there, so it's a pretty wide space. And if we develop there, we can just expect to have worse flooding. This whole area, water was diverted from that area in the recent storm and went down toward Lonnie DeFoy Street and went down a storm drain, and that was a factor contributing to the death of the firefighter, Trey, who was trying to unclog that storm drain. We had previously testified to the Planning Commission that this was not a good place to build because of the danger to public safety and that someone could lose their lives. And unfortunately, already we've seen that if we try to divert the water away from this area, that it gets very dangerous. So I would like to ask that that area be put in open space and left available to be part of our natural infrastructure to help us manage ours.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions to the testifier? Thank you. Okay. Let's see. Do we have any more testifiers online? No. Okay. Next testifier in the room, please.
Hi, Doug Ballard, South Maui resident, and with Maui Tomorrow. If you look at your sub-area 3 maps, you'll see a cross-hatched section which designates areas that have been identified for sea level rise. And there are several undeveloped parcels which are given development designations in the draft map that are subject to sea level rise. One in particular, if you go about a half block south of Lapoa on the east side of Kihei Road and going up, that's all designated, because there's a drainage way there, that's all designated as sea level rise area. And yet it also contains on the draft map an intensive classification, relatively intensive classification of small town center and residential. And we would recommend that that should be open space. It doesn't seem to make any sense to, if we know the areas are going to be inundated, to allow development there. And so I think it's also may have a wetland designation as well. So we would recommend removing those more intensive designations from that and any other undeveloped parcel that's subject to sea level rise. Relative to the Haleakala Ranch industrial area, I don't know of anything that's unique about industrial designation zoning. Already the draft maps have taken all of the, almost all of the undeveloped property within the urban growth boundary and designated that for different things, including industrial. There's already quite a lot of undeveloped industrial property designated. And to go beyond the urban growth boundary to add to that, notwithstanding, I think, the request from the recycling center, perhaps that could be carved out. But for the rest of the 100 acres, for that to go industrial, you have to think about all of the increased traffic, truck traffic, and all those other things that that's going to generate when we already know the infrastructure is inadequate. And so we would suggest that now is not the time to designate that property. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Thank you. And next testifier.
Aloha, everyone. I almost was going to testify in online, but I figured I could do it better in person. Is it possible to put one of the maps on the screen while I testify? No? It's okay. Okay, so my name is Brandy Corpuz. I live in in Kulakai, and I work here, and I've raised my family here. I live in this area that we're talking about, the sub-area 3, down by the beach, or close to the beach on South Kihei Road. Anyway, first of all, I'd like to say that I am against any further development in or around these areas between Kalepolepo to Lipua or beyond until infrastructure is put into place. No infrastructure improvements means no development. We can't keep talking about development without putting in local affordable housing first and foremost. And we need, apparently, infrastructure to do that. So that should be first on the line. Then the pink area in the small town center that is within this park, at the boundaries of this park or the edges of this park, flows or goes beside Waipulani Gulch, which Robin Knox just was talking about. And I think it's ridiculous to put a small town center or industrial area or anything like that beside our gulch or our wetlands that we are in the process of trying to protect. And we all know this, and we all know that it floods every time it rains, upcountry or in Kihei, it floods. The Waipulani Gulch floods, and then it affects all of us downway, and there should not be something there like an industrial park or housing or anything, small town center, whatever it is, it shouldn't be right up to the Waipulani Gulch. Instead, I propose that a park or greenway or open space be put into that area that is closest to the Waipulani Park. That's the only way that we can ensure that it will not be further devastated from construction, which I call destruction. And then just because there's open space in these areas, any areas, does not mean that we need to fill it up. You guys' job is not to fill up all the areas in Kihei. I don't believe. I believe your job is to say what the community wants, and what the community wants is affordable, local affordable housing that really is for our people. It was mentioned that we have 400 less people in our population right now, and I believe that's not a good thing to hear, because that's our people who work and who live here and raise their families here. Thank you.
Thank you. Question from Mike.
You can't get away, Brandy. We have questions for you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the good work you continue to do for the community. And just to clarify, I think I heard you say, no development until we get infrastructure, but then you mentioned getting true affordable housing for the local community. So would you say it's okay to build that kind of housing before we get the infrastructure, or infrastructure first, period, and then housing?
Good question. Thank you for asking that, because I didn't get to finish my statement. I keep hearing that there's no infrastructure for affordable housing, and there's no water, there's no drainage, there's no sewage, all this kind of stuff. But I don't hear that when we talk about development of any other kind. We're going to make a tech park. We're going to make a recycling place. We're going to make all these different things, but they seem to be able to have infrastructure. I don't see why we can't have infrastructure for truly affordable housing. And what I mean by that is not workforce housing. I mean truly affordable housing that our people can stay here and live here and be a part of our community. Because 400 of them have already moved away. I guarantee you they were local people that moved away, 400 people that they talked about.
Mahalo.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Aloha, Kelly King, 40-plus year resident of Kihei. And I wanted to give support to the input you already got from Maui Tomorrow, but I wanted to emphasize some of the points made on there. One is the open space you've heard people talk about as far as the wetlands and the sea level rise area. If you look at the map that I think Albert submitted, there's seepage from sea level rise that comes into Kihei beyond where that actual hard line is. And none of that should be developed because that's all storm surge area. So you need to look at that land. As far as the Haleakala Ranch area, I am really offended that we're going to try to designate something that's outside the urban growth boundary. Those boundaries were set by the Maui Island Plan, and if somebody wants to change those boundaries, they need to make an amendment to the Maui Island Plan, not our community plan. Our community plan has boundaries, and this is nothing personal. I love what the Sullivans are doing, and I've actually tried to help Pete get a grant and stuff. I love what they're doing. I think they need to go to the council outside of this process. We can't be putting things into our community plan that are not meant to be there. So go outside and address the Maui Island Plan, but don't put it into this community plan, because people who start businesses shouldn't be getting zoning to accommodate their businesses. They should put their businesses into the areas where the zoning is. The other thing I wanted to address is the fast track entitlement process could be used. That phrase needs to come out of the plan, because when you put those phrases into the plan, those are used to push development through, because all of a sudden that's in our community plan, and there shouldn't be those types of suggestions in our community plan. We need more open space. We need to protect our open space. We don't need, when I first chaired the planning committee in my first term, after we got done with the Molokai community plan, I had a conversation with Pam Eaton, who was head of long range planning, and one of her statements was, well, we don't really have that much to do in the community plan process because we already have those urban growth boundaries. And I said, no, but the urban growth boundaries are the outside boundaries. What the community plan process is to decide what within those boundaries we're going to develop, what we're going to develop in the next 10 years, 20 years, what we're going to leave open for maybe the community 20 years from now. And so the constant talk about needing to plan up to all of those boundaries is really disturbing. And I think it flies in the face of the Native Hawaiian uses of these lands as well. We need elbow room. We need to plan for the community we have today, not the community we're going to have in 10 years, or not the people who want to move into Kihei. Let's think about the people who already live here. The other thing I wanted to say that you guys really need to think about where there's conflict of interest, because if you're one of the developers, you shouldn't be voting on those zoning changes in those areas. You know, the thing that just came up about going outside the urban growth boundary, that's a huge decision that needs to be made at the larger county level. So, and you know, I've been in a position myself where I've recused myself when I had a special interest, so I'd like to see that. Anyway, I didn't get through everything, but I'll answer questions if you have them.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Wayne first, then Cody.
Kelly, you mentioned conflict of interest. Can you be more specific?
Well, if you are, I mean, I know Mr. Dowling has some interest in development in this community. I know Ms. Sullivan has some interest in the process, the proposal that was just made. Somehow these proposals are getting into the mapping. They're already being changed. You know, the community is coming and asking you for things. We don't see the maps changing after we talk to you, but we do see them changing after developers talk to you. And so that's a little disturbing. I've been in those situations where I know if you have a personal interest in something, you're not supposed to vote on it. And that's what I'm talking about as far as conflict of interest. And if you don't know whether you have a conflict of interest, and we've done this before on the council, you go to the Board of Ethics and you ask them. And I've done that myself personally.
Anyway, Ms. Sullivan has already gone. We thank you for your honesty. Thank you.
Cody?
So I was wondering a little bit more about the fast track entitlement process. I noticed in the past that within this process, a lot of times our cultural sites and traditions can be overlooked. Have you had any experience in seeing that as well?
Yes, I mean, we've seen that in Wailea 670. And we've actually been told that those studies were done, and then when they were redone, we found many, many more sites. So the fast track process, while it might help some projects go through faster, it also has the ability to skirt over important cultural sites. It's one of the reasons why we are in the position we're in today with so few wetlands and so much flooding, is because all of this stuff was fast-tracked in the 80s and 90s, and we were just getting run over. I mean, there was dirt and noise and construction everywhere during the 80s. So I've seen teachers at the Kihei school who became sick because of it. They had to leave their windows open. They were breathing dust constantly, and they told me when I was on the Board of Education, my voice doesn't normally sound this hoarse, Kelly. This is from all the construction in our community. So we went through a couple of decades where we were fast-tracked, and right now we need to slow the roll, and we need to look at why are we doing this, what is appropriate. Not all housing is necessarily affordable, not all housing is necessarily appropriate.
Any other questions to the testifier? Everett?
Kelly, are you stating that you only support affordable housing?
For housing? Yes, I support affordable housing.
Do you live in an affordable house?
I actually do, because but it was a federal program. I mean, it wasn't considered an affordable housing track, but we got into it through an affordable housing program, federal program, the Farmers Home Loan Deal.
But is it income specific?
You had to be at a certain income to apply for that particular program.
Okay. And you still qualify for that?
No, we were in the house for 3 years. We weren't allowed to build onto it, so we had to borrow against the equity, pay the loan back, because it was a 13% loan that was bought down to 1 or 2%. So we had to pay 3 years of that back in order to add on another bedroom, because I was pregnant with my son. So, it served its purpose. We got into the home that way. We're still in that same house. So it's been 30
Point of order,
years.
is this relevant to Sub-Area 3 land use designations?
I'm sorry?
Is this relevant to the Sub-Area 3 land use designations?
Yes, if she's stating that there should only be affordable housing within that, yes. Thank you.
Any other questions to the testifier? Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, I want to state for the record, Kelly mentioned workforce housing. I've not heard from planning department, even when you had the housing department come in, did they mention one iota, one location of where they'd like to see workforce housing produced. And I don't know if this new mayor that we elected is coming before this in front of us, that he'd like to see workforce housing produced. I really wish you would make an effort from planning department. Do you guys have any plan for workforce housing, like Kelly mentioned? Have you identified it? This plan?
This is not a discussion between the planning department and the committee. This is just clarifying questions to the testifier. Thank you. Any other clarifying questions to the testifier? Tova.
Hi, Kelly.
Hi.
Thanks for coming and sharing, as you often do. In terms of fast track, I'm hearing that you're not thinking that's appropriate for developments because of the past record. Do you think there's ever a case where for critical infrastructure we should look at fast tracking?
I do. I actually do. I don't think we should put that terminology in the community plan because it indicates, because there's no designation fast tracking for who or what. And, you know, as we saw with the Waipuilani proposed project, there was a very good affordable housing project proposed for that area, but it was a wrong area. It was in a flood zone in a wetland. And when you fast track, that's what happens. You end up where we're at today, where a lot of our wetlands have been developed without anybody looking at it seriously. So, you know, there's a lot of information out there that I've urged you folks to look at, and one of them is the wetland mapping that actually was done by Vernon, Shar, and Robin Knox. It should be the basis for the county's mapping, you know, wetland overlay map, but I don't know if they're going to use it. It was done with county money, if you can believe that. It was a county grant that they got, and it's not being used. But there's a lot of information like that, and until you see those maps and you see the information and you assimilate it, we're going to end up with just accommodating developers because they own land and they want to make money. So that's why, you know, that's why it's important, I think, to not put that language in there. Sidewalks, yeah, fast track the sidewalks. Fast track the infrastructure. Don't fast track every project.
Any other clarifying questions, the testifier? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier.
Good evening, Chair and committee members. Zandra Amaral Kraus, and I'd like to testify on North Kihei, where we're at. I'd like to address infrastructure in brief. I think that our speakers before me spoke very eloquently, and I think you got the point. We citizens need infrastructure before industry. Also, most of you know that I live at the dead end of Ohukai Mauka. My home abuts Haleakala Ranch, where my cousin Brandon Baltazar raised cattle for many years with a nice lease from Haleakala when Peter Baldwin was alive. Now the Hayes properties are going in, and this all has to do with industrial land. Our developers are scaling the intent of the state law in going from ag to urban. And how they're doing that, brothers and sisters, is by requesting 14.9999, because as you know, it takes 15 acres, and they go before the board. Well, that's where we need your help. They're skirting that, and there's nothing that you can do about that, nor me, because that would have to be the legislative body that would have to change that. But in my neighborhood, Hayes property has not even opened yet, and there are big trucks. 2 children nearly got run over because the truck backed up with the children. We have no sidewalks because it was fast track. Was I blessed by it? Yes, I was. When I came home from the mainland and I was very sick and my husband died, I had nothing. And I was very fortunate to have my name drawn for Maui County Housing. And I think everyone should have that opportunity. But I'm very grateful for the family that's doing recycling. However, North Kihei Mauka, everything runs down. The flooding, just imagine these trucks and heavy equipment in these industrial areas coming in and out. No safety for the children. Absolutely no small town no more. You know, as I ventured down to the Kihei Commercial Plaza today, where I met with a couple of the owners of the businesses that are quite concerned about the construction that's happening now, and if it rains, the flooding that they'll incur. which they have. So I humbly ask you guys, as you look at redistricting, we've got most of South Kihei, Mauka in ag. It will not be changed by the state because they will not go before the state commission. So I humbly ask that you very carefully know that we do not need more industrial projects in our small town called Ohukaimauka. I humbly ask you guys, our children, and people like me, mo'opuna, I mean not mo'opuna, kupuna, I wish I was a mo'opuna. But, you know, it's difficult. I like walking to the stores, but I can't, so I humbly ask, take all of that into consideration. Families first, industry last.
Thank you. Any
Thank you.
clarifying questions for testifier? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next testifier. Albert wants to testify? Okay.
Can you folks hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, okay, I will proceed. Please start my time now. So yeah, aloha everybody, CPAC members and audience, aloha haku. I'm Albert with Maui Tomorrow. I want to talk about a couple parts of our written testimony. One is the drainage and public safety. When you're discussing proposed developments where a gulch or more than one gulch exists, there have been statements indicating that a particular project would meet drainage standards and retain all the runoff generated by the project. But the current county drainage standards are widely recognized as being inadequate. They only require designing for 10-year storms and 50-year storms, but the storms we've been seeing are getting larger and more frequent than predicted. So, contrary to the assurances of developer consultants, under current drainage standards, designating more land at Mauka for urban development will make the existing bad situation worse, not better. It'll also increase the danger for residents in the flood zones and the emergency responders who try to help them. So I'd just like to point out that your decisions will have an impact on this situation going forward. Briefly about the proposed Haleakala Ranch industrial area. We have our written testimony, but I just want to add that the uses being proposed up there are still possible with special permits like they currently have. And yes, it's a hassle to renew it every few years, but that type of permit does provide an opportunity for the public to weigh in and say how it's going. So good operators don't have anything to worry about except for the periodic review. As far as fast track, I just want to make sure that I state that saying that there should be fast track is the community plan saying that the community plan should be ignored. It's not appropriate. And it also lends itself to rushing and considering many cultural and historic resources, wetlands, etc. on the land. So we don't think that's appropriate, it should be removed. Then I wanted to talk about project districts. I know that the current plan has a scheme that says, well, we're going to designate using our existing designations, residential, transit-oriented corridor, those kind of things. But they're not specific enough, and they can lose the intentions of the original project districts if they're redefined to those suggested categories. So what we're recommending is that as soon as possible, you go back and add a designation description called project district. And we would recommend that the CPAC defer assigning designations within existing project districts for now. And then after you do, if you do decide to add that project district designation, then you go back and assign the project district. And I would really look at some of the aspirations.
3 minutes.
I'll stop there.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions? Thank you. Do we have any further testifiers, either in the room or online? Dick Mayer online? Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to speak about 3 items on your agenda. I'd like to get the time allotted for each of those items. First is sub-area 3. The Maui Research and Technology Park is something that I've worked on back in 1980s when it began as an idea. Don Malcolm was put in charge, and lands were set aside on Haleakala Ranch land in Kihei for that purpose. What I want to bring to everybody's attention on the CPAC is the fact that that project district, allows for 1,250 homes. It allows for 2 million square feet of commercial and industrial land. It doesn't say how much should be commercial, how much should be industrial. I point those things out because you were tempted last week to take a look at North Kihei, Mauka area, and here we have an area that already has much of the infrastructure. Much of it has now 2 schools that have been built, the charter school as well as the new Kihei High School, all available for that area. And the question is, why didn't the developers of that land, they're now asking for land use designation in your plan, why haven't they put up a single house on that land? 1,250 would have solved a lot of the affordable housing and just residential housing, market housing, for the South Maui area. So I'm asking you to put them on the carpet. Why the Research and Technology Park has not put up a single house, and they haven't put up the commercial things and all the things that they are now allowed to, and yet we find others asking for more industrial land. You already have large amounts of industrial land, hundreds of acres in this park that could be used for that purpose. With regard to the Haleakala Ranch request that we heard this evening, that's outside the urban growth boundary. As you know, I was on the Maui Island Plan. I was the vice chair of the GPAC for that. And we purposely set that line so that no development would take place outside of that line. You've already indicated that along Mokulele Highway, but now Veterans Highway, there'll be industrial land there. You have a lot of industrial land already available. There is no need to add areas outside the growth boundary when we already have much industrial land being proposed and I think going to be adopted within the boundary. And finally, with regard to the sea level rise in this area, on your maps you have a lot of little X's over land close to the coastline, but it's on many of those X's are on residential land use areas. I would urge you to make a blanket statement that no housing, no residential housing should be allowed on those lands. Otherwise, you're going to run into the same problem that people in West Maui who built hotels near the coast now are being forced to take emergency measures, or more likely, forced to rebuild their hotels further away from the coast. We don't want people to have to give up their housing, so those areas should be all declared either park, open space, or park or open space. With regard to the second sub-area, second item I'd like to talk about, that's the...
This is a new 3 minutes. Excuse me, is this a new 3 minutes?
Yes, it is.
All right.
The sub-area 4, one of the major issues that you have there, as well as the rest of Kihei, is the drainage that comes down the mountain from the district that I live in. I'm on the board of the Kula Community Association. I was the vice chair of the CPAC Forum Country. I would like to offer some assistance to your group, some ideas that you may want to incorporate in your plan. One of the things that happens is you have the flooding. Very often it's sunny in Kihei, but it's pouring very, very hard up country. I would urge you to include in your plan, even though it's not going to be in your plan, it should be part of your plan, that rain gauges be place across the slopes of Haleakala, along the highway in Kula would probably be an appropriate place, that have a transmitter so that when more than, let's say, 1 inch of rain or some number of inches of rain, a signal goes out to emergency plane, that they can send a signal out to people in South Maui that there would be potential flooding taking place, and maybe be able to locate it exactly where. Would it be coming down from the Pukalani side of Kula, or from the Ulapalakua side, or somewhere in the middle, depending on where it might be raining very hard. And I would urge you to think about putting something up there that will help your district be prevented from having major flooding problems and people not being able to get out in time, et cetera, and you know the problems better than I do. In the same district, sub-area 4, is the Wailea area. I've mentioned this before, but now it's appropriate. I was on the Planning Commission in 1973, in April 73, when A and B at that time promised that they would take 1/3 of the housing at Wailea that would be workforce housing, and they even used the word workforce housing, to the Planning Commission. They also said that they would provide an internal transportation system so that people in the upper parts of the property would be able to get down to the ocean and would not have to have cars and parking problems down near the coast. A and B obviously never did any of that, and what I've urged you to do is put some kind of a provision in this plan that would say that A and B's Wailea Resort area, the whole area, potentially McKenna Resort and Wailea 670, all work together to set up an internal bus system that would be a shuttle system that would allow people in the upper slopes to come down to the areas below, right all the way from Big Beach all the way back through Wailea area, through the sub-area 4. And finally, with regard to your agenda next week, you have, this is the third item, another 3 minutes, but I'll only take 1 minute. With regard to your next meeting, I heard last time that you may be discussing changing on that vote that was taken last night, unanimous vote, not unanimous, but majority vote, to not have that area north.
If this is about next week's agenda, they'll have to wait until next week because we're only taking testimony on this week's agenda items.
The next meeting. So I'm just saying, I'm urging you, today you'll be voting on whether to do that, to set up your agenda for next time. I'm urging you, do not put that on there. I think it's something that the RNC Park, the present RNC Park, should be able to handle all of the future housing in the North Kihei area, and there's even other areas as well.
Okay. Thank you. Any clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you. Are there any more testifiers online?
I'd be available if you want me as a resource. Thank you.
Do we have any further testifiers?
Take another 3 minutes?
Nope. Sorry.
I have a different topic.
No, but we're only taking testimony on sub-area 3.
The Wailea
No.
part?
Nope. Do we have any further testifiers online?
Yeah. It's
Oh.
on the Wailea, it's on the agenda.
It is. When we get there, when we get to that point, you can testify. Okay. Okay. Testimony closed for the sub-area 3, and starting. We'll start by working. Oh, okay. I have an announcement here from Jennifer.
You got people that live in Kihei that care, obviously. Why are we being so strict to these people that, why don't we tell them ahead of time, if you want to say something about tonight's agenda, speak quickly. I feel it's really rude to punish our residents that don't have a chance to speak to us when they want to. I wish you would show a little bit more compassion. Thank you.
We need to let Jennifer make her announcement here.
Thank you. As I mentioned last week, and as Wayne alluded to, when I joined this committee, I took the initiative to approach the Board of Ethics and ask them if there's anything I should be concerned about when it comes to matters dealing with Haleakala Ranch, since our recycling company is on their land. And they advised me to recuse myself of all questions, discussions, and voting on topics to do with and concerning the ranch. So, to your point, Kelly, taken care of.
Thank you. Cody?
Chairman, can I ask that Albert and Dick Mayer be used as a resource for planning?
Any objections? Okay, Dick and Albert, I don't know if you can still hear. You're being asked to remain online and be available as resource persons. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to work our way, just like we did last time, from north to south. And this time I tried a different approach. I actually labeled them 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Make it a little bit easier to follow. So starting with number 1. And what I did is I just identified all the areas which have changed from the 1998 plan to the current proposal. So number 1 is the Piilani 1, 2, and 3 areas, the Safeway Shopping Center, the Piilani Gardens, and the Kihei Community Center. Those are all project districts in the 1998 plan, and now they are, of course, since then developed and proposed as residential and small town center. So I'm being blinded here. So like we did last time, I think the easiest thing to do is if someone would make a motion either to adopt the proposed change or to propose something different, and then we can discuss that. Everett?
I'll make the motion just for discussion purposes.
To adopt the proposed changes?
Just for discussion purposes.
Yes. Is there a second? Second by Jennifer.
Can we have a summary of the permitted uses now under the project district and what the permitted uses would be under the proposed?
So, I mean, I prefer to let planning department answer that, but if not, I could give my interpretation. Karen? Or Jackie?
You're talking about the MRTP project district uses,
No,
correct?
no, we're on number 1, Piilani 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
I mean, basically, project district is whatever it's defined to, whereas the others are well defined. They have given zoning. So MRTP we're not talking about MRTP right now, but they want to continue project district because it already has defined zoning. This had zoning up until this point, but now it's built. So
I don't think it's all built.
Oh, okay.
I think the properties, and I don't know what that road is that runs parallel to Piilani Highway and South Kihei Road, the north-south collector road right away. But I think there are some properties makai of that road that have not been developed, and I don't understand. I don't know the impact of what's being proposed on those properties. I think one of them is designated for workforce housing or a light tech project, and I think the other side of the street had residential, commercial, and hotel.
The uses that are in the community plan designations, they aligned those uses with the designations that were chosen for the given area. But I can find the Piilani 1, 2, and 3.
Chair, I
Cody?
have a question. So in that area, Pilani 1, 2, and 3, the Safeway Shopping Center area, those open spaces that are over there, we're talking about those areas as well too, right?
That's where I'm asking the question too. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
there's
believe
like-
we are, but
Yeah, there's like a reservoir, kind of a catchment there on
Yeah,
the
there's
Liloa.
a couple of wetlands over there that are really important.
Hey, Karen. You got a bigger map, kind of hard to see. Small, that's why. Everybody get a hard time see where we're at.
Yeah, the catchment is designated park in the proposal. The catchment is designated park in the proposal on Liloa.
Thanks, Karen.
Everett, could you say again which street or which area we were thinking is might not be covered here?
Under number one, I'm curious to see what the permitted uses are under the project district and how those permitted uses would be impacted by the proposed change to small town center.
So I'm looking at Title 19 in the various chapters that are specific to the different project districts. There are a couple in South Maui. Kihei, let's see. Would this be Kihei Gateway Park Project? No, okay. There's one for Wailea 670. There's Palauea. Okay, let me load more.
Yeah, gonna be behind Long's Drugs, Balka.
Okay, yeah, I'm not sure which project district it is, but each project district has its own chapter in the code, and that's going to spell out what they can do and the various standards for that different area. So I'm not seeing one that matches up with this area.
So maybe the sheet is just misworded, because it states Pialani 1, 2, 3, Safeway Shopping Center, Pialani Gardens, Kihei Community Center from Project District. Maybe it's not Project District.
Yeah, that might be it. I'm not sure. I just don't see it as a chapter in Title 19.
Okay. Okay, that answers that then.
Unless it's Kihei McKenna Project District 5, but
No.
okay. Yep. So sorry, I'm not sure. I'm sorry about that. I don't know.
Okay.
It is project district in the 1998 plan.
Chair,
Yeah, that's the red, the purple there.
can
Yes.
I make a motion to defer this until we can say that again? Oh, there's an open motion.
Yeah, we have a motion. So the purple shows where it was purple, where it was project district, where it is currently project district. And then switching back to the current proposal, you'll see what's proposed for now.
So this number one, your number one, doesn't refer to any properties below the north-south collector road, then it's
Nope, it's Mauk of North-South Collector Road and north of, let's see, what is this? North of the Kia Community Center.
okay. Thanks.
Mike?
So in this area, is there any vacant land left? I'm trying to picture anything. I mean, there's land that's not developed. There's that park, but is there any land left that could be developed there?
No, not as far as I know. It's just the catchment and then the Safeway parking lot.
That's what I thought.
Vernon?
Okay, just for reference, those 2 square boxes, that's the wetland pond, right? Well, with a mauve or pink, pastel pink.
That's not part of the project district that you're currently talking about. That one is downtown Kihei. The project districts, sorry, it's really hard to do this.
Yeah.
So that's the project district is just that purple part,
Mhm.
this right here, which is mostly developed. But the part you're talking about is that pink part,
Mm-hmm.
and with the green part, and the wetlands is the green part.
This is where we're talking about right now. No.
No.
I just wanted to break it down by pieces, not try and do it all at once. So just looking at that one project district, and not all these other things at one time.
Thanks for the clarification.
So the designations on there are the existing uses. So like Safeway's kind of small town center-ish. The houses are residential.
Okay. Further discussion? Any objections? Cody?
I guess I may be a little confused, but I know that this area is pretty critical in regards to our wetlands, and so I really don't want to see any further development in any kind of development in that area.
Mike?
I'm sorry, could we have the motion restated again so it's clear?
The motion is to adopt the proposed designation of residential for Pilani 1, Pilani 2, Pilani 3, and for Small Town Center for Safeway Shopping Center and Pilani Gardens.
Mahalo.
All of which have already been developed. So Cody, these are all things above the north-south collector road?
But the thing that kind of confuses me is that even they're all considered, it's all considered project district though, right?
In the 1998 plan.
Right, so that includes even the catchment area and all of that.
Cody, if you wanted, you could make a motion to have the catchment basin be open space instead of park. But everything else is developed.
Yeah, it was also part of the project district. It was not called out specifically in the 1998 plan. I mean, that's really because this area was not developed then. There's nothing there then.
Yeah, I just couldn't stick with my gut and oppose it.
Vernon?
So the 2 ponds, and then maybe Jackie can help me out. So above those 2 ponds, are they permitted already for development? You know, the behind Long's Drugs.
Why don't we finish this part first before we go to that part? Because we get.
No, that's why we're
very confusing.
No, we're confused already.
Yeah.
That's what I mean. That's why we don't like screw this up. You know, if we staying above Liloa, then we stay above Liloa. I don't know. We don't know where we're at.
Everett?
Vernon, the properties that we're talking about now are above the north-south collector road. So it's, it doesn't include those wetlands or we're not talking about anything between the north-south collector road to Longs.
My whole thing is why we're going to designate something that no need be designated if everything is already developed.
Everything has to have some designation. I mean, they might want to rebuild it or remodel or something, and they'll need to know what they're allowed to do. Are they allowed to put up a cement factory? No. Are they allowed to put up a high-rise commercial in Pilani 1? Nope, because we say that it's residential. So we're basically saying that this is residential, it should stay residential.
Yeah, well, as for someone who is really close to that area and actively gathers in that area, being that it's really close and who knows what can happen, as you say, and how it's developed or redeveloped, then yeah, I oppose that. I don't know what kind of impacts it's going to have.
Tova?
Cody, how would you zone the area that is already all containing houses? What would you recommend?
I would recommend that it stay the way it is for now.
We do not have, there's no such designation in our new plan.
Then I would vote that we make it a designation. See, I just gathered some kalua from that area, and the whole pond is dying right now. Yeah, I don't know what kind of impacts is happening to those areas. Makalua is one of the rarest sedges that we have left in this area. And so I gathered it to ensure its health by growing it in another place. You know what I mean? I know you guys don't understand what I'm talking about, but for me, when I'm talking about what kind of impacts it's going to have and the uses of our plants and our sedges and what we can use them for to ensure their survival, then I'm going to make sure I take every chance I can to make sure that those things survive. So if I don't only want to go vote that way, then so be it.
Well, I just don't want there to be a misunderstanding. I mean, for example, the Pi'ilani 1 subdivision, what would we call it if not residential?
All I know is that there's a lot of things that are changing really fast, and like Vernon was saying, we're just trying to understand and add our part to this puzzle. So the way things is right now, I'd rather we keep it the way it is right now and come back to it later, or I don't know. All I know is I actively use that area. I don't see anybody else down there.
Cody, the designations on the area we're talking about, it's already developed, and they are just the designations that are what is already developed there. It's not a more intense designation. It's residential where it's residential.
Yeah, I get that. You know, that's why I'm like, so why are we going to designate something that is already developed?
So if somebody in the residential area comes in and it's project district, maybe they'll be like, I want something else. And then it's project district, it's not residential. So it's not as clear.
And then how do I know that I want something else going to be unimpactful upon the areas that mean a lot to us?
That's why you have to designate what it actually is on the map so that it's clear what it is on the map. So people can't just come back and whatever they want. The clearer it is, the better. And so if it's residential, saying it's residential is better than just leaving it project district. If you want things to remain the way they are, then small town center for where Safeway is appropriate. The area you're talking about gathering, I believe, is the downtown Kihei area that is undeveloped, but they do have some development rights. So that's a separate issue from what we're talking about right now. We're talking about the part Mauka of Liloa, yeah.
And so Cody, this is Safeway. Right there is a round table about there. And then that's that housing. And then this the Key Community Center, right? Swimming pool. So we're just talking about yeah. So all this they developed already, Cody? That's that soccer field drainage retention basin. Just for reference. They're not talking down. They're not talking down below yet. I just catching on. So this all developed, Cody. Above Liloa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you ready to vote? Those in favor, please raise your hand. And those opposed?
How about Daniel? Is he?
Well, let's get Daniel's vote here. What's Daniel's vote, Karen? His camera's off. And those abstaining? Okay. So do you count me as abstaining when there's, I mean, I don't vote on this, I absolutely have to. So I don't know. Either he votes or he's not present, right? One way or another. I mean, he was present.
Daniel can't actually
So
speak.
I was actually looking online and he had raised his hand using the raise hand feature. Oh, here we go, he's online.
So how did he vote? So how did Daniel vote?
He's using the raise hand feature, so I'm not sure. Daniel, did you vote yes or no?
Can we ask him directly if? Okay, so Daniel, are you voting for or against or abstaining?
Daniel's voting for the measure.
24, okay.
So that makes 8.
Okay, cool. Okay, motion adopted. Moving on to 2, which is, I say Yees, but it's not the entire, it's not the entire parcel, right? Oh, I'm sorry. 6:40, okay, Brian joined at 6:40 p.m. Thank you. So the next one is, it's really just, it's a small area there, which is at the South Kihei Road end of that parcel, which is being proposed to change from commercial to residential.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
This is where I'm having a little bit of problem. This Yee's Orchard, they want to go from commercial to residential. Yet, I don't even think the planning department even contacted the Yee family. This is similar to Cody's concern that I know of. When Dr. Yee was alive, he was concerned and told me before he passed, Wayne, I'm so disappointed that whenever it rains, all the water that comes from a big rain comes into my property and floods it. Just like Cody said, this is a wetland. And I don't think government, we as government, have even contacted the Yee family at all, to ask them, do they want it to go from commercial to residential? Right now, it's Yee's Orchard, and you got mangoes growing. What has happened to we as people of Maui County? We don't even talk to people living there, that farm there. We should vote no on this. Let's get talking to the owners of the property and ask them, you want to change your designation to from commercial to residential? Or you got a bunch of mango trees that are producing good fruit to eat.
So, Karen, you could clarify that maybe?
Limited commercial is allowed in residential. So the Yee's current use is covered by the residential designation as it is. A designation of commercial would support redevelopment as a commercial site. So that's a question of if you support a redevelopment of that area as a commercial site or you support their current use.
Everett, you had a comment?
Can we see the Google Earth on this one, just so we're clear what we're...
Yes, the whole rectangle was residential except for that corner, which is commercial. Now it's proposed that that corner also be residential.
It was this part down right here that was commercial in the 1996 plan. This one up here was always residential.
Hey, Cody, and then Wayne. First Cody, and then Wayne.
Can you show the Yee's property again on there? Is there a motion on the floor right now? Noah? Can I make a motion for that property to be designated as open space?
It's just across from Nohokai Street.
Cody, is your motion to designate just the Yee's property open space, or what area are you saying to be designated open space that you're proposing?
The area that Karen was pointing out.
The one lower down that you were pointing out, Rob, is this part is downtown Kihei. And then I can't remember what this is right here, but this is the Yee's property right here.
So there's a motion. Is there a second? Okay.
I want to speak to the motion.
Go ahead. Before you do that, there needs to be a second. Is there a second to make Yee's Orchard into an open space? Okay, so that motion fails. Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, government can't be a bunch of bullies. You guys are not bullies. You ladies and gentlemen are not bullies. Telling people we know better than you. I move that we defer this concern until we talk to the landowners.
Is there a second?
Yeah, like I second. I would try that out of respect to the Yee's family.
Okay, discussion? I understand this is confusing, but I get what Karen was saying, is that residential allows Yee's Orchard to continue doing what it's doing. Commercial would also do that, but commercial would also open the door to doing something which we absolutely don't want there. So it's a little confusing.
We just call them res/com. half and half. Or I don't. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. I'm not getting it. That's why. So I figure I would just talk to the family, and they tell us res, then we go res.
Do you want to see the area where the Yees have their fruit stand redeveloped as something that's more like Safeway? Or would you like to see their current uses maintained? If you want to see the current uses maintained, it's residential is the appropriate designation. If you want to see it redeveloped, then small town center or economic center is the appropriate designation. So hardened surfaces go in with commercial.
And I like them the way stay right now.
Cody?
So I'm looking at like 20, 30 years down the line too. And we need every bit of open space that we have left. With the flooding, drainage issues, it all comes down to the Aina. And yeah, that's how I look at it. So yeah, it's gonna continue doing what I'm doing, you know.
So we've run into this a little bit before, and I think we're going to run into it over and over again as we now go into each of these areas, that don't get entirely hung up on the label. You need to look at what are the allowed uses there, because that's what determines the future. I mean, the labels could be confusing, they could be wrong, whatever, but the uses that we define, that's what counts. It would or wouldn't? Would not. Yeah, in open space, they would not be allowed to do agriculture there. They would not be allowed to grow mangoes there. So that's why you kind of have to look at what are the uses we want rather than the label. Okay, so we have a motion to defer this. And we have a second. Vernon second. Tova?
As Rob has already stated, I mean, it's certainly we should all be talking to the community, but if they suggest they want a commercial designation, it doesn't mean I think we're going to necessarily support what they say. So I'm wondering if we're kind of conflating the desire to make sure the community that we're trying to set this up for is in the loop with actually making decisions. So I'm not sure what exactly we're deferring. We can't defer decision making. We do not probably want another Safeway at Yee's Orchard.
Oh yeah, I don't like another Safeway, so I'm gonna withdraw my motion.
So, yeah, so I actually I had to investigate this a little bit further, this business about withdrawing, because we got kind of confused last time. And once I have recognized there's a motion, then it no longer belongs to the submitter. So it's not just a question of that person withdrawing or the second withdrawing. Someone has to make a motion, or one of the two can make a motion to withdraw it, but then we still have to vote on it. Or we could just vote on it.
Question.
Wayne?
Planning department, can they move it to ag? And why not?
I didn't say no. You can make that recommendation as a committee that you would like it to maintain an ag. That is their current use.
So move to leave it in ag.
We first need to deal with Cody's motion.
Wayne moved to defer and Vernon seconded.
No, but I mean, Cody, we already have a motion on the table.
Right, there was no second.
But Vernon, okay, but Vernon withdrew his second. Okay. Okay. Are you now seconding Wayne's for ag? Okay. But once a motion is made, we still have to vote on it, even if the person who made the motion withdraws it. I just investigated that today to make sure that was the case, according to Robert's rules. So, I'll ask the question. Those in favor of withdrawing the motion that was made to defer, please raise your hand. We do not want to defer. Raise your hand. Okay.
Sorry, okay, so now we're voting to withdraw the motion to
Exactly.
everybody.
Okay. We don't know about Daniel, though. Is Daniel voting or?
Daniel voted in favor of the motion.
Okay. So motion
All in
passes.
favor.
Okay, so now we can entertain a new motion. And Wayne's motion is to make it ag. And it was seconded by Cody. Okay. Discussion? Vernon?
Okay, what if the guy with the mango decide to put a couple piggies? They can put pig, right? Ooh. See where we stuck, right?
Does the current motion have a second?
Yes.
Call for the vote.
Ready for discussion? Any objections to making that corner ag? Everett? Okay, so we'll vote on this then. Those in favor of the ag designation for that corner, please raise your hand. And those against? And how about Daniel? Okay, so I find. Okay, and any abstentions? Okay, so that motion fails. Everett?
I move that we go from commercial to residential,
Which
which allows the existing use.
Seconded by Jennifer. Discussion? Those in favor, please raise your hand. Residential. And those against? And how about Daniel? Against. And any abstaining? Okay, fine, we have adopted as residential. And it is time for a 10-minute break.
Yeah, we're going to take a break. Take a break.
Okay, resuming at 7:22 p.m. The next area is the Pi'ikea Lipoa Haliku'ai from currently commercial to small town center. Is there a motion? Pi'ikea Lipoa Haliku'ai from commercial to small town center. Can we get a motion so we can start discussing this? Motion by Jennifer. Is there a second? Second by Brian. Okay. Discussion. Brennan?
Just for reference, where we at with number 3? Pi'ikea Lipoa.
Everett?
I need to recuse myself from this one.
Okay. So this is, there are a number of these changes which are really kind of lateral. I mean, they're not really, they're not a change in use, so just recognizing what they're used for today. This is our current small town center, Kihei's small town center. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, adopted number 3 as a small town center. Number 4, this was a project district. Oh, this is continuing south past Pilani Gardens, which was project district, and is now proposed to public, quasi-public, which is the community center, and residential.
I make a motion that we change it from project district to public, quasi-public, and residential.
Second by Jennifer. Discussion. Any objections? Okay, we've adopted, made that change to public, quasi-public, and residential. Next one's the bigger one, and that's where we had the testimony on. The MRTP from project district to transit-oriented corridor, small town center, park, and an area at the very far south to ag and open space. I just want to point out, just for information here, that this is, I think, the first time I've seen agreement between Maui Tomorrow and the developer wanting to keep it as a special project district rather than explicit uses. So I think everyone was first there.
Can we ask a question of the owner's rep?
We should have done that before, made them a resource person.
Can we do that?
I guess we can, yeah. If are there any objections to making them? Yeah, I think it would be appropriate. Any objections to making them resource person? Okay. Are you willing to answer questions?
So are you in agreement with the proposal?
As currently shown on the map right now, no, we would like special purpose district around our entire, and it's not project district, it's actually its own zoning code. Just like how on Title 19, there's M1, M2, B1, B2, we are our own zoning code, which is very different than the project district.
So this would be similar to the airport situation, where there's an airport zoning. Correct, Jackie?
Yeah, it would not be similar to the airport in terms of zoning. That's not.
No, but I mean, it's a special district.
It does have its own zoning, however, it is a form-based code, which is what the purpose of these designations is to move more towards a form-based code. The reason for these designations is that there's no uses so unique that it can't fit within these designations. For instance, TOC can have the light industrial uses that are part of the zoning code, but are part of their zoning uses. The small town center doesn't include those, but the TOC part would.
Go ahead, I think it's important for this decision.
Although it's great that Karen's here saying that that's possible, what happens if she's not here? What happens if there is another person that is interpreting what can be allowed in a TOC? So I'm not only looking at right now, today, I'm looking at 20, 30 years from now.
Given that there's a existing specific zoning for the high-tech park, that's gone through a multiple hearings, multiple. I actually think the zoning code was updated, maybe I don't know, within the last 10 years. I move that we go for the special purpose district.
Is there a second? Second by Jennifer. Discussion. Any objections? Wayne?
Mr. Chairman, I want to speak to the motion. As this lady came before us tonight, this is what's so upsetting. We say that we have a legal person assigned to this committee. We don't have one. Had the Corporation Council been here, and she's paranoid about Karen not being with the planning department. Had we had a legal representative, we could have had a legal opinion. And based on testimony, which is recorded, had there been a suit against the county, we would have legal opinion from our corporation counsel. That's the reason why I said, Mr. Chair, earlier, as we started this deliberation on the community plan, we got to get a legal person. Right now, we're listening to these guys from planning. They're acting as our legal representative. I don't want to listen to them. Give me an attorney. That's why they're getting paid over $100,000, in case you people watching don't know. That's what they're getting paid. Our corporation counsel attorneys.
Any further discussion on the motion? Any objections? Okay, finally we've adopted a special purpose district for MRTP. Next we have the proposal from Haleakala Ranch to expand the 30 acres of industrial to 106 acres beyond the urban growth boundary, number 6. So for this one, this is not actually in the plan proposal. So unless someone makes a motion to do this, then we just move on.
I move to expand the industrial area.
Is there a second? Second by Brian. Discussion.
And I do this so that the recycling facility can expand, can continue to recycle the waste, hopefully the sludge, and hopefully produce energy out of the sludge. But to make that type of investment, you have to have zoning. You can't do it based on a 5-year special use permit.
Cody?
I already see impacts to our dry forest happening already, and I don't want to see any more. We've heard from testifiers about our infrastructure. I want to make sure that that's our focus that we're looking at, and everything that happens up Mauka comes down Makai, and so we gotta be gotta kahele and make sure we're paying attention to how we're caring for those spaces. For me, it's really important because right now we're in the Volcanaka, we're near the ocean. That's where Kulakai has always kind of been, and moving into these upper areas, we're traversing into a totally different space. And so for me, it's really about acknowledgement, understanding what that means, and knowing the kind of impacts that'll have to our aina. Mahalo.
Mike?
I still remain concerned about manufacturing. Now, I know Pete explained what his recycling process could be called manufacturing, because he's making something, but he's really recycling. He's not making anything new, So I think that's fine, but when that category says manufacturing, then it seems to me it's now open, that somebody else could come in and bring in a factory with all the negative byproducts of manufacturing that close to a residential area. So I'm still have reservations about going to industrial for that reason.
Tora?
I'm supportive of what is trying to be done in that space. To the concerns about the traffic, it actually has the potential to reduce traffic, because if we're actually recycling in place rather than requiring everything get hauled to the other side and back, there's a ton of value in being close to where there's R1 water access for various things. So in terms of the types of activities, and as for the manufacturing, my understanding is that the ag zoning might do something that creates another path where there has to be approval. So, I mean, my concern is more of a process question for the planning department. Is it appropriate for us to go beyond the boundaries of what's in the Maui Island plan? If someone could sort of speak to that piece, that would be helpful.
The planning department does not designate outside of the urban growth boundaries. You can make that recommendation if you'd like to. The reason for requesting a designation like this would be to get a change in zoning, which would then allow the other uses.
Karen, would a change in zoning require public hearings, and could conditions be put on a change in zoning to limit manufacturing, the type of manufacturing, or limit it to recycling, for instance?
Yes, it can.
Okay.
But once the change in zoning is done, then it's a little bit different.
But there could be a unilateral agreement.
Discussion. So I think there were objections, so I'll call for a vote on this one. Those in favor of extending the industrial area there, or designating that area as industrial, please raise your hand. And those against?
Daniel is against the motion.
Daniel's against. And abstaining. And then Jen is recused. Okay, so that fails.
I'd like to make another motion.
Okay.
We just voted on a 106-acre expansion.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion of a 50-acre expansion, which hopefully will be enough to address the expansion of the recycling and the recycling of the sludge, but address Mike's concern about other manufacturing. Too much land that would open up other manufacturing.
Is there a second? Nope. Okay, so that fails. I have a message here from Albert that Daniel has tried to vote against some earlier things. We need to keep this one, yes, but the previous one too.
I thought we had his votes.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Okay, and then the next one on my list. What?
Sorry. Daniel is making a motion, no expansion of the area.
I'm sorry. What was the motion?
I'm so sorry. You know what? It's been really difficult to do this. So he wants me to read his comments. let's see. He is moving for it to remain a project district. And because this proposal is outside the UGB, CPAC should be careful to not set a precedent by considering adoption of proposed land uses outside the established UGB at this stage, without considering the potential impacts of such land uses.
So it's not a project district, it's ag. So if we don't change anything, it remains ag. So he can't really make a motion to continue it as project district because it's not. I mean, I guess he could make the motion, but is there a second? Okay, so that fails. The next one is the county lot next to the police station, which proposes to change it from park to public, quasi-public.
I move to change it from park to public, quasi-public.
Second by Brian. Discussion? Any objections? Okay, fine, we have made that change to public, quasi-public. The last one I had was Maui Meadows, which is not necessarily a change, it's just reflecting the new land use designations. It's rural in the 1998 plan. It's proposed as rural residential in the new plan.
I move to change it from rural to rural residential.
Is there a second? Second by Jennifer, who's not recused from this one.
I think it reflects what's actually there already.
Discussion? Any objections? Okay, Maui Meadows, rural residential. Are there any other changes anyone would like to see in the proposals for this sub-area 3 compared to what's in the proposal? Okay. Moving on. So moving on to sub-area 4. So opening up for public testimony on. I'm sorry. You had a question or?
Sorry, moving too quickly. Sub-area 3 sounds like this would be the opportunity if some of the undeveloped land that's in a gulch that's currently zoned residential, requesting that open space buffer in the areas that we already know flood massively, that this might be a time for that.
Yes, it would. So do you have particular TMKs or areas?
So specifically the Waipuilani Gulch, Makai of the north-south collector.
So my reading of that is that it is, except for the already, let's see. Okay, no, it's not. Okay, yeah, so it's currently, there's a small part which is proposed as open space, but most of it is proposed as residential.
Yeah, so I would move that we add more open space to that parcel to reflect the fact that it's well documented that it floods. And we've passed a number of policies to that effect.
Second by Mike. Yeah, okay. So there's a large rectangular area that's the Mauka part, and then there's the smaller part as it narrows down towards the sea. But of course, it follows the gulch. How well do we need to define that here in order to move on?
So how much of a buffer did you want? Did you just want it identified on the map? And is this the only one? Do you want a 100-foot buffer, which is the policy?
I will put for discussion a 200-foot buffer, because the difference between this area and the other areas where we've designated a 100-foot buffer is the Mauka areas tend to be deeply incised and are not actively causing flooding and mud flows. This area, because there's a lower grade, we know that water is dispersing into that whole area, so it warrants having a wider buffer.
Vernon?
So we put 200 feet on the Pi'ilani Promenade, yeah. So would we have to be consistent with such a number? If we're going to make them 100, if we're going to make them 200, then we should be consistent throughout? Or we're going to decipher, in between 50 here, 100 here, 200?
I think these waterways that have the potential of bringing a lot of water down from Mocha, and for expanding throughout the area, should be required a larger buffer zone because of the just because of the amount and of the location.
So Karen, who enjoyed that map? The one get yellow and green. You know.
The one that's on there right now. This was Mike drew the map to start with.
So
Johan has been the one maintaining it. If you guys want to see what the 200-foot buffer looked like that you added last week, that would be like that.
Correct. Yeah, just because then when I see that, I refer back to engineering. It's everything's wide Mauka, and then obviously it becomes skinny. It is what it is, but that's a good, accurate reference on past planning. Yeah, engineering.
So the Mauka rectangle is about 450 feet wide, so it's easy to get a big buffer there. And I would imagine we just want that whole thing to be open space. There's no reason to do anything else there. But the lower part, the Makai part, goes between about 100 feet and 150 feet in width. So that's the whole width. And then beyond that, there's actually houses with properties. So you couldn't really have a 100-foot buffer on either side of that without tearing down some houses. My suggestion would be to just make the parcels that are in the wetland there open space, regardless of buffer, the entire thing. Tova?
I would like to amend the motion to make the entire parcel in open space.
Is that both the parcel that is right here and the parcel that's right here, and things Mauka of the highway, you're good with how it is?
The Makai of the highway undeveloped parcels, to be consistent with the policies that we've already set.
Yeah, three parcels. There are three parcels. You'll have to double check that. That's just what I see. Okay. Discussion? And I hope you guys know that there's a lot of activity going on right now to get those acquired by the county to put in open space anyway. But I think it's a great idea to say that that's what we want. So, as a matter of fact, we did take that as an action to make these. But since we're discussing land use, it makes sense that we do this now. Any objections? Okay, so those 3 parcels in Waipulani, and any other ones while we're at it?
So the sea level rise areas, can you have those in open space as well? Or the undeveloped areas? Make a motion for that.
Second by Tova. Okay, we have a motion. So. This is the 3.2 Slurexo, right? Yeah. So. Yeah, this Slurexo actually extends into some property, built property as well.
My understanding was the undeveloped Slerexa is open space, so like just what I just wrote there. Is that what you're looking at, Cody?
So that'll take a little more work to identify which parcels we're talking about, I think. Because I mean, currently, if I look at the map, it looks to me like the area which is undeveloped is, I mean, it is open space. So do we need have planning department figure out which parcels are affected by this?
It's probably easier if we do this.
Okay. Is that okay with the Cody that we asked the planning department to come back with a list? Okay. Thank you. Yes, we're deferring to get a list. Yes, Wayne.
Karen, I know we never dealt with this concern before in the plan. What are we doing with all the properties that are going to be affected by sea level rise? Do we have a statement in the community plan?
There is a policy. I don't remember exactly where it landed because part of Corporations Council's advice was that the policies for sea level rise are the purview of the Maui Planning Commission.
Mr. Chairman, if I'm going to be a signature as part of this community plan, I want to know the specific language that is being developed. When will that be ready?
It's on the March 1st meeting, I think, is posted with the CPAC changes to that language. I can take a minute and look it up.
So that reflects all the changes that were made to the policies and actions? Okay. Okay, so are we done with sub-area 3? Okay, is there any testimony on sub-area 4?
Thanks. Good evening. My name's Christian Chan. I'm a principal at Wailea Golf. Thanks for having me here tonight and allowing me to share some of my thoughts. It's more of an update on the presentation that we gave on April the 19th. As you may recall, we're the owners of about 550 acres in the plan area. It's actually split between two of the sub-areas, about 175 acres in the Wailea sub-area and 375 in the McKenna sub-area. I'm here to speak on both, although I can, well, it's more general comments on both. The presentation we gave April 19th was following 6-7 months of careful listening and learning from you all, from the presenters, and from the community at various CPAC meetings. And we covered 3 important topics in that presentation. The first was expressing certain planning priorities in a variety of ways that we think we can help achieve the goals of the plan. The second was stating that we believe we required more time for further engagement and dialogue to assess which opportunities were both feasible as well as most important to the community. And number 3, that we would only then be in a position, once we've had those conversations, to propose a map that was thoughtful and well-informed. Well, we're well underway with that community engagement and those discussions. I've met with a number of you folks on the committee, other community members who are in this room, and we have plans to meet with all of you and anyone who's interested in giving their input and submitting their feedback on what might make sense on our property. We have a timeline and a schedule that we want to adhere to perform that community engagement. It's not an open-ended process, and I'm happy to share more about the details and dates of that with you. But we want to put on the record tonight that we do intend to submit a map down the road in accordance with that schedule, which will be later on this year, and we hope to get to a place that you will all hopefully voice your support for that plan and that map when we're able to propose it. But of course, at that point in time, you will also have the opportunity to oppose it if you do not support it. So just want to end by saying we regret and apologize that we weren't in a place to present a plan and a map today or at the McKenna meeting, but we hope that we will be allowed to do so in the future. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Question from Jennifer.
Hey, Christian. Nice
Hi,
to
Jen.
see you.
Yeah, you too.
So you alluded to a time frame.
Sure.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're currently engaging with various community members. We expect that to take through the end of June. These consist of one-on-one discussions, asking them about who they represent, whose voices want to be heard, and what's most important to them. We expect that to take through the end of June, and at that point in time, we'll work on a draft map for our properties that articulates the land uses and the program therein that will be colored with the community plan designations. We expect that process to take the month of July, and then through the next couple months into September, we want to socialize that that plan with the various members of the community and the committee members here as well. And by the middle or end of September, we expect to be in a place to submit a final proposed map for consideration. I think the process will be in the Planning Commission's hands at that point in time. But again, I would encourage you all, if you are willing to come testify either in support or opposition of it.
Other questions for the testifier? Wayne?
As a user of the ocean, Christian, born and raised in the islands, I'm sick and tired of being treated like a second-class citizen a lot of the ocean development, a lot of the locals have been locked out. We feel that this isn't our home anymore. Similar to Ian Tongi, the guy that won the singing contest.
Mhm.
His family was forced to leave Kahuku
Right.
and move to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a citizen of Maui County, Hawaii anymore. I ask you to be sensitive to us locals that were born and raised here. We got to move. It costs too much. I asked somebody from the planning department, how much does it cost to live in $100 million home right now?
So what's your question to Christian?
His answer was, I want to finish.
What is your question to Christian?
His answer was $6,000 a month. That's not for local people. You heard the testimony earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Where is it for us that you own land in Wailea that you want to do something for the local people?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
I think, Wayne, our intention is not only to be sensitive, but to be responsive and directly serve the local community in a number of ways. First, of course, would be workforce housing. I conveyed to you when I made my presentation that we intend to do more than the requirement, so that's number one. I think a second really important way that we intend on doing that is we're in discussions with certain community members now, some of whom are in this room, about a cultural center. Where can we locate that? Because we believe that culture and Hawaiian culture specifically is in dire need for South Maui. And so we want to be able to allocate land and funding for that purpose. I know there's a sentiment out there that in this sub-area in particular, there's a feeling that the land was taken from the people, right? That wasn't my family or our company that took any of the land. We do own some of it now, and we believe that this is an opportunity to help give it back in a certain way. And so, absolutely, that is a driving and fundamental part of what we want to do here.
Christian, I see a lot of these characters that I don't know by name tonight, working for the development of Maui. I look at some of the areas that you want to turn into number 9, sub-area 4. You want to turn Polo Beach condos in from multifamily to resort hotel. Most of us are locked out. We want to go congregate, take our grandchildren down to the beach, play down the beach, boogie board, surf, barbecue. I don't care. We got no place else to go.
Can I speak to that?
Go ahead, Christian.
So we don't own any coastal property. However, we do have land, significant amount of land, and part of the program, a requirement of our program would be to allocate to parks and open space that would be available to the entire community. And so I think that's one way to hopefully address the desire that you're voicing.
What about designating a parcel because you want to build a hotel of land for public parking so we can park our cars? Right now we're locked out.
Sure.
People from up country, from Kahului, they get up late. We're locked out. We can't go to get a parking and go to the beach. What about giving some back to Maui people?
Absolutely. I think that.
Okay, Christian can't give you land on the beach, so.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't have any.
We have some land that's not too far from the beach, but not quite on the beach.
Let's move on. Thank you. Are there any other questions for Christian? Thank you.
Thanks.
Cody, you had a question for Christian?
So is the land that you guys are using, is that all undeveloped?
I guess it depends on what you call developed. It's all disturbed because it's golf course right now. So it's been graded. It's been, the raw landscape has been demolished and made for golf use. So it depends. There's not a ton of built structure on the land that we own, but it's disturbed, developed with golf course.
Have you guys thought about, so it's kind of in the in the dry forest region, right? You'd say
Possibly formerly, or at the very least very close by, if not just Mackay of it.
And have you guys ever gave thought to restoration of any kind?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was kind of sparked something earlier when you were talking about identifying the areas that could help. I think you mentioned that you were transplanting certain native plants so you could propagate them elsewhere on appropriate lands. I mean, it's exactly that kind of discussion and analysis that we would want to do. What locations within our property would be appropriate for that type of thing? I don't know. It's through conversations with professionals and experts in that arena, and potentially people like yourself who know, that can help guide us towards a land use program that supports stuff like that. And you and I are hopefully going to meet on Monday, and I would love to explore discussions just like that.
Or would you ever be willing to give a site walk of the area?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions, clarifying questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
Next testifier on Wailea.
Thank you. Good evening to our Weltman and CPAC members. My name is Jeff Uyoka, and I'm here to expand on the written testimony I submitted on behalf of the owners of the shops at Wailea. Before I begin, I'd like to thank all of you for all of your hard work on this South Maui Community Plan update. The shops are a gathering place in the heart of Wailea Resort, and they serve as the primary dining, retail, entertainment, and amenity center for the surrounding visitor accommodations. The 70 stores are a hub of economic activity that collectively generate more than 700 jobs for Maui residents. I have a few critical points that I would like to share with you regarding the designation of the shops at Small Town Center. First, doing so would create an existing inconsistency between the community plan and the existing zoning of the shops, which is primarily BR, Resort Commercial, with a smaller portion being H2 Hotel. Importantly, in looking at Appendix F of the draft update, BR and H2 are not listed as the most compatible zoning districts for Small Town Center. Instead, BR and H2 are listed as being most compatible with the Resort Hotel designation. To avoid this inconsistency, we're asking that you change the designation to Resort Hotel, which is most compatible with existing zoning and best fits the character of the existing development of the property. A Resort Hotel Community Plan designation would also be consistent with the designation of the similarly situated Whalers Village Shopping Center in Kaanapali. Like the shops, Whalers Village is zoned Resort Commercial, however is designated as Resort Hotel in the West Maui Community Plan update. In the previous West Maui Community Plan, Whalers Village was designated as Business Commercial. The shops are currently designated as Business Commercial in the South Maui Community Plan. Given the similarities between the properties in terms of existing use, character, zoning, and previous community plan designations, we would suggest that the Resort Hotel designation applied to Whalers Village would also be appropriate for the shops. In closing, our request is for consistency between the community plan designation and the existing use and zoning for the property. This consistency can be achieved by changing the designation for the shops to resort hotel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions for the testifier? Wayne?
Jeffrey, I talked to you earlier about the area of the parking lot. And earlier, when I was sitting on the policy with a little power, I was able to get parking for a Grand while there. Similarly, how about getting land for public parking to get to the ocean? Like I asked Christian earlier.
I'm in a much lesser position than Christian with my client, but I will definitely take that to them and discuss it with them as a discussion point.
Any further clarifying questions?
I know you worked for the county before, and I'm not saying you have any excuse. Perhaps you can get together with Corporation Council and have this discussion about creating language that we may be able to put in the community plan.
Definitely, if I get the authorization from my client, I'll discuss with them, and we'll definitely look that up, Mr. Nishiki.
I'll call you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any further clarifying questions? Thank you. Next testifier on Wailea.
I totally concur with Jeffrey. I mean, Wailea is already a resort destination. I worked as a marketing and sales director for the Whaler on Kaanapali Beach many years ago. And they were part of the hotel districting, and they are now. And I think to be consistent, especially with planning, you know, it would be harmonious because Wailea and the shops of Wailea is one and the same. And it would just add continuity to what they already are. But thank you, I think it's consistent. Thank you.
Any clarifying questions? Thank you. And next testifier, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cal Chipchase. I represent Honu'ula Partners, the owners of the Honu'ula Project, formerly known as Wailea 670. Thanks for the opportunity to comment tonight. I'm commenting on Sub-Area 4, Wailea, specifically as it relates to the Honu'ula Project. My colleague, Dean Frampton, who's our project manager, submitted our written testimony, and that has really two parts to it. One part is requested text changes to the description of the project. This would appear on page 101 of the current draft. I won't go through those text changes with you. You have them in front of you, but if you have any questions or comments about them, I'm happy to discuss them. The second part to Dean's letter, the letter you all have, deals with the mapping, specifically at maps 3.15 or figure 3.15 and 3.6. What those maps together do are allocate specific uses within the Honu'ula area. The problem with doing that at a community plan, and really a revision to the 1998 community plan, is that that is already a project district area. Not just project district in the 1998 community plan, but project district in its zoning. There is a specific zoning code for Honu'ula. It's in the county code at chapter 19.90A. That chapter lists the uses that are permitted within the district and includes other requirements. In addition to having its own zoning, there is a phase 2, which is a planning commission approval of the project map. That project map designates specific uses in specific areas, from residential to commercial to multifamily. At the community plan level, or the revision of a community plan level now, you can't go back and change that zoning code, that specific phase 2 approval with its detailed mapping of the uses. And so with respect, we'd request that those figures, 3.15 and 3.6, be revised. The appropriate designation consistent with the decision this body made earlier tonight is special project district. That not only reflects the history, but the entitlements, the existing entitlements for that project and would be most appropriate for this community plan to avoid any confusion or conflict. Thank you for the chance to testify. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any question from Wayne?
Glad to meet you.
You too.
Where do you live?
I live on Oahu.
You guys have part of your change to provide 25% workforce housing units. Where do you plan to put them in?
So the workforce housing units will be located within the project itself. It's actually, we committed the Planning Commission and to the council before that to exceed the minimum requirement. We're actually at 288, which exceeds what Chapter 2.96 would require. They will be located on site.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Cody?
Chair, I just wanted to make sure that Daniel was, being monitored in case he had any questions or anything like that.
Who's in touch with Daniel at this point?
Hi. So Daniel's question is, are there commitments that Wailea 670 made when it became project district that are yet unfulfilled? If yes, would giving them a different land use designation release them from following through on those commitments?
Thank you for the question, Daniel. Daniel and I have talked about this project, walked the project many times. I, with respect, don't entirely understand the question. There are no conditions that are unfulfilled at this stage of the project. There are other conditions associated with the project, like expanding the highway. That is a component of our zoning conditions and would need to be performed as specified or when specified in the zoning code for our project. The challenge with changing the designation is that it would upend in some way those prior determinations, or at least call them into confusion. That could affect conditions. It certainly could affect land use designations. And since have phase 2 approval as our last discretionary approval for the project, you can't go back and unplan it or change the planning for it. And that's really the core issue with the figures as proposed.
Randall has a question.
I just had a question. I was just curious what a workforce housing unit would look like.
So there's different types of unit, both multifamily and duplex units slated for the project. Again, all within the project area, however described.
Question from Jennifer.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you just clarify? So Daniel's question was if we do change the zoning, just a little clearer.
I'll try.
Okay.
As I said, and Daniel, I'm happy to try to answer it a different way if you're watching. I didn't totally follow the question. The rezoning of the project, and it's been through council twice, includes a number of conditions. I think Daniel's question had to do with whether changing the mapping, the community mapping, would affect those conditions, and as a predicate, whether there were any unfulfilled. And so let me try to break that down into two parts, and I'll do my best. And again, Daniel, if I get it wrong, tell me. There are a number of conditions on the project. Some have been met and needed to be met concurrently or prior to phase 2 approval. Some needed to be met after phase 2 approval. And so those conditions, since we have our phase 2 approval, are in process of being satisfied and will be met as specified in the zoning ordinances. As for whether changing this designation could affect those, I suppose it could in this way. It would change the designated land uses that have been approved not only by the community plan years ago, but by the council and now by the Planning Commission. When you do that at this stage in the project, you call a number of things into question, and that could include the conditions.
Any further clarifying questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next testifier. Are there any testifiers online? No? Okay. Finishing testimony for Sub-Area 4 and starting the discussion.
Chair, can you hear me? Hello?
This is Albert? Okay.
Yes. Hi. I'd like to testify on Sub-Area 4.
Go ahead.
Okay. I wanted to clarify that we are not in agreement with developers who are seeking special purpose district designation. The Kihei McKenna Community Plan existing one is very clear about what should happen in the project districts. That language is lost when you designate those areas as special purpose district. There's specific language for each of the project districts that is being lost when you do that. Contrary to what you heard from the previous testifier, you certainly can make community plan designations that conflict with current zoning because the community plan shows what you would like to have an area be like, and it is not ruled over by zoning. In fact, state law says just the opposite, that zoning is supposed to implement the community plan, not the other way around. So, if given a choice, I'm guessing we would prefer the current designations, but I really think it's a mistake to eliminate and not add another designation for project district, which you are in the process of doing. I wanted to move my attention to, or bring your attention to a parcel. It is south of Kilohana Park in Wailea, and it's between, it is Makai of Kapili Street and it's Malka of Wailea Alanui. So this is just south of Kilohana Park, and it's currently used as an extension of the park because it's undeveloped. This was originally supposed to be a school site, and now it's proposed to be residential. There are a lot of cultural sites in the area. There are drainage issues in the area, and the owner is currently doing an environmental impact statement because they tried to get away with just doing an environmental assessment that said there would be no impacts. Maui Tomorrow filed a lawsuit, and we were successful, and so now they're doing an environmental impact statement to disclose those impacts. We would ask that this committee designate it as park instead of residential. And if you are not sure which parcel I'm talking about, I can try to share my screen. Thank you.
Any clarifying questions for the testifier? Wayne?
Karen, are you familiar with what Perez is talking about?
Yes, but he could. We can identify that exact parcel when you get to it.
Albert, why can't you be more specific?
I can give you a TMK. It's 218 parcel 145. It's a 23-acre parcel. And I could show you on the map if you want me to, if I'm able to share my screen.
So designated in the community plan as a school site?
No, the current draft of the, it was designated in the original Wailea plan as parcel SF-S. So that was the school site, and now it's being proposed for residential by the current owner. It's adjacent to the dog park, the Kilohana Park, and it's used by a lot of people now because it's undeveloped, and we think that there's not enough park space in the area, and it should be developed or designated as park. So that's what our request would be.
Thank you.
Any other clarifying questions for the testifier? Thank you. Do we have any more testifiers? David?
Good evening, everyone. David Good here on behalf of Ledcor Maui. I hadn't planned on testifying because we actually aren't proposing anything that's a change. But based on Mr. Perez's testimony, I think I need to speak a little bit. The parcel Mr. Perez is referring to is in the current community plan, the 1998 community plan, as single family. It was rezoned, approved by the council, to single family in 1998. So the current zoning is single family. It's limited to 2.5 units per acre by its conditional zoning. The community plan, like I said, existing is single family, so what is being proposed is not a change. The parcel, if staff is able to bring it up here, is immediately adjacent to Kilohana Park. So if you're familiar with Kilohana Park, there's a water tank there. You come down Kilohana across from the fire station. Kilohana Park, where it's developed, you can see there's a play field up there. There's a little dog park. It consumes about 3 acres, and it's on county property. The county property is 13 acres. There's 10 acres of undeveloped county property currently. So in our estimation, there's plenty of park space that has not yet been developed by the county. Kilohana Park is maintained by the Wailea Community Association at no cost to the county. So the parcel that Mr. Perez is referring to did have an EA. The EA, as he mentioned, was overturned by the court. It was not overturned because it was inadequate. It was overturned because of the concern of segmentation. Because we had other potential properties that we may be developed, the court ruled on a segmentation claim, not on an adequacy claim, as he notes. So there's, in our opinion, it's zoned appropriately. The community plan designation that's been existing and the one that's proposed by staff we're in concurrence with as residential. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions, the testifier? Thank you. Any additional testifiers on sub-area 4? Okay, closing testimony on sub-area 4. Starting again from northwest. Well, actually, you wanted to take a break? Okay, 5-minute break. Okay, resuming at 8:34 p.m. Okay, so the first item is shops at Wailea. So planning department's proposal is to go from commercial to small town center. And we heard testimony that the shops would like to be resort hotel instead.
I move for a resort hotel, similar to Whalers Village and consistent with the existing use.
Second by Jennifer.
I will say one key difference between this area and the Whalers Village is that there's a policy in the Kihei McKenna community plan to ensure that the parking stayed parking and did not be redeveloped as a hotel. So that was part of the reason for the small town center, and their current uses are reflective of a small town center.
Mike?
I'm going to speak in opposition to the motion. A couple of reasons. One, we're hopefully looking for real long-term, and we're not looking at what's there now and what may happen in a few years. Eventually, if that were to change, if we look at some of the permitted uses in small town, possibly housing, mixed commercial use. So I think in the long term, we somehow have to get some housing in Wailea. Otherwise, we're never going to solve the traffic problem that we have in South Maui, because all these workers can't afford to live here, so they all are going to continue to commute. So long term, we need some kind of housing, workforce housing, some type of housing in that area. So I think we have to allow for that opportunity, which Small Town Center does. Thank you.
Everett?
Mike, I agree with you with the need for housing in the area, and I think that's what the Wailea 670 project achieves. That's 1,250 units of housing in the area.
Mike?
I'm sure that the process is not for debate, so I don't think I appreciate Everett's comment, but Wailea 670, I think, is 25 years old, and still nothing has happened. So I think counting on that as being the solution to housing in that area, it can't be counted upon. But again, I don't want to create a one-on-one debate, but that was my feeling on that comment. Thank you.
Daniel has a comment.
Yes, go ahead, Daniel.
He wrote, the shops of Wailea attract a lot of non-tourist patrons from outside the resort hotel area and do not cater solely to visitors. It is expanded beyond hotel use. If it didn't, the shops would not have survived COVID.
So we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the motion? The motion is resort hotel for shops at Wailea. Okay, since I know there's disagreement, I'll call for a vote here. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Pardon? Yes. And those against?
Daniel is against the motion.
Okay, motion fails. Can I get a new motion? Mike?
Well, I'll make that opposite motion as stated by the planning department to go to small town center.
Is there a second? Second by Tova. Discussion? Those in favor, please raise your hand.
Daniel is in support of the motion.
So that's 6? Okay, so I'll vote in favor then, so that passes. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't ask for the nose? Okay. Nose, please raise your hand. Okay. And is there anyone abstaining? Okay. Okay. Sorry about that. Yes. Yes. The next one is Wailea Town Center proposed from commercial to transit-oriented corridor. That's number 2.
I move to change it from commercial to small town center.
Is there a second? Second by Jennifer. Discussion? Any objections? Do we have anything from Daniel?
Daniel objects.
Daniel objects. Okay, so we'll do a vote on that. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And those voting against? And Daniel's against?
Yes, he's against.
Daniel's against, okay. And abstaining, Cody. Okay, so I'll vote for that, so that passes. Yes. Next one is Wailea Gateway from commercial to transit-oriented corridor. It's number 3. This is Wailea Gateway from commercial to transit-oriented corridor. And I'm just going to make a comment here. We've discussed this a little bit before, but I've been thinking about this a lot since last meeting when Daniel and I had a little discussion about transit-oriented corridor. And I pointed out that my experience with transit-oriented corridors, lots and lots and lots of them in California along light rail routes and train routes. That's kind of the way it was used. It was a way new residential areas were built with the intention that people could take the train to wherever they wanted to go. That works for Honolulu, or will work maybe at some point, and it probably works for their bus lines too. But the term itself is not really that appropriate for Maui. I just have a hard time. I agree with Daniel about that, but you have to look at what are the and you can't just look at the label. You have to look at what are the uses intended for it. I mean, originally this was called urban corridor. People didn't like the label urban corridor, so it got changed to transit-oriented corridor. But even if it was changed to something else, what matters really is what the implications are, what are the uses. So I would ask you to not just focus on the label, but think about what are the uses you want for this area. Wayne?
Are you saying that it doesn't work? Or it becomes a real project?
I would be all for it if it was a real project, yes.
You don't like it?
I don't like the name. I like the use.
This particular parcel already actually has the density and the amount of commercial for transit-oriented development. So it's like a good place for bus service. Maybe add a little more.
So I would think it would be either transit-oriented corridor or small town center with the new uses.
Karen, can you put up could you please pull up the transit-oriented corridor permitted uses? Wait, we have it. I move to change it from commercial to transit-oriented corridor.
Second by Mike. Discussion. Brian?
So my concern of the TOC is that that corner right now, without the infrastructure changes, is an absolute nightmare. It's one way in, one way out. It's the direct access to the resorts. By putting that designation, we're saying that it can have even higher density potentially, and we're just creating a bigger challenge directly into that route getting into the resorts. So I would feel more comfortable with small town center, so that we're not necessarily looking into the future to say that we can continue higher density until some of those things change from an infrastructure.
Okay, so another option for a name for that the planning department had thought of was pedestrian-oriented corridor. So what you're saying by putting that designation on there is that you want what that area is lacking, which is sidewalks. That was a challenge. I used that picture for transit-oriented corridor, and finding an area that had sidewalks in it was a little bit challenging. There's like a strip. But that's what there's more to transit than just a bus and just cars. It's walking, biking, it's all of it.
And a lot of people walk up there now from the hotels. They walk all the way up the hill. So, and it certainly does need sidewalks, but I look at the existing use, and I think transit-oriented corridor ties into the existing use.
Are we ready for a decision? Okay. So since there's some objection, I'll take a vote on this. Those in favor of transit-oriented corridor for Wailea Gateway, please raise your hand. And those against?
Daniel's in favor of the motion.
Daniel's in favor. Okay, in that case, I'll vote yes. So motion passes. Next one is Wailea Village, proposed from commercial to small town center. That's number 4.
I move to change it from commercial to small town center.
Second by Brian. Discussion. I was just there on Tuesday to go to the farmer's market, and I guess I hadn't been there for a few years. There's a bunch of new stuff there. Used to be only a pizzeria.
You got to get there early and buy the biscuits from the lady who makes the biscuits.
It's exactly what I did. That's exactly what I did. They were excellent. Yeah. Discussion. Any objections? Any objections? No? Okay, how about Daniel?
No objection.
No objection, okay. So that passes. Next one is number 5. This is the big one. Wailea 670. So proposed from project district to small town center. It's actually a combination, broken down to a bunch of different things. Small town center, residential, public, quasi-public, neighborhood center, park, and open space. And then we had testimony from Maui tomorrow that should be project district, and from Dean Frampton that should be special purpose district.
I
Who
move.
wants to make a motion?
Daniel's making a motion, okay?
Yes. He wants to make the following motion. I make a motion that we review the Project District 9 ordinance for Wailea 670 before we make any changes in land use designation for this area.
Second by Mike. Discussion. Objections? Objected by okay. Let's have a vote. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. And then I'm sure Daniel is in favor since he voted. He made the motion. Those against? Okay, so motion fails. So we need I would suggest we get a motion for either what's proposed by the planning department or special purpose district, because those are the only 2 options we really have for this area today.
I move for a special purpose district, which I think over the course of 25 years and in light of the project district 2 approval is appropriate.
Is there a second? Second by Jennifer. Discussion.
The map used is based on their map of their current project district approvals.
Any objections? Daniel?
Daniel's comment is that I think this motion will have unintended consequences that the CPAC may not be aware.
Is he voting for or against? Or I mean, if he has objections, we'll take a vote. Maybe put it that way. We'll take a vote, just to be sure. Those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. This is special purpose district. And those against?
Daniel objects.
Okay. So that fails. So it does need to have some designation. Cody?
Why does it need to have some designation if we already voted in favor of deferring it?
We did. We voted against deferring.
Oh. Did we?
Yep. We really only have two proposals. One is special purpose district, and the other one is the this complex proposal from the planning department.
Daniel has made he wants to make a motion to defer this item until the next meeting.
Okay, we have a motion to defer this to the next meeting. Discussion? Mike?
Yeah, I think that may be appropriate. I mean, we only have a couple of minutes left, and I think what Daniel had first mentioned, maybe if we had more information on what that project district, I know it's not quite clear to me on it, and to try and be clear on it in a couple of minutes so we can make a vote. I think this may be appropriate, not to waste time, but if we're at the end, maybe it is time to wrap it up and say, let's see if we can get more information on a fresh note next week. Thank you.
Could someone explain what information we'd get that could change anything here? I don't understand.
Well, I think Daniel made the first motion that we do some research on what project district. We should ask Daniel what he said. I think that would be rather than me interpreting what he said.
But the point is, we need to make a decision on what it should be. So I don't understand how that has any bearing. I mean, what is it that's being proposed? That's the question.
What's being proposed is that we say adios, good night, and come back with fresh discussions.
But there's nothing.
Try and jam something in the last 2 minutes. That's my interpretation, sir.
So let me explain this. There are only really two options. One is special purpose district, and that will carry forward what's already defined, or we define something new. So there's no option to go back and see, let's do something entirely different. There's just no other option. So there's just kicking the can down the road doesn't really help. So those are the two options. Think about that. Is it continue the project district in the form of a special purpose district, or is it to define individual uses for each of the parcels? And besides the developer's request, there is also the benefit that was pointed out by Maui tomorrow, that it preserves the definitions and the conditions that were set in the past. So, and I believe that's why Everett made that motion. But we do have a motion to defer. Those in favor, please raise your hand. And assume Daniel is in favor too. So that means motion passes. So that motion is deferred. I mean that topic is deferred. There is. Is there a second? Second by Jennifer. Any discussion? I think it should be multifamily. Just kidding. Yeah. Any objections? Daniel, any objections on the Conti water tank? Okay.
He's not sure what we're voting on. We didn't hear the motion.
Okay. This is item number 6, county water tank, which is what I think it is, just from looking at the satellite image, from multifamily to public, quasi-public. Does Daniel have any objections? No? Okay.
Space to park.
So we can get back to 7 after that, I guess, but let's just get this done then. Okay, is there a second? Second by Brian. Discussion? Any objections? Okay.
For number 9, Polo Beach condos, right now it's multifamily, but it was done, it's grandfathered to allow short-term rentals. So I moved to take it from multifamily to resort hotel to reflect the existing use of the property.
Second by Jennifer. Discussion? Brian?
So if we're making that designation because that's short-term rentals, would that not necessarily need to be reflected in all other short-term rentals? Why, I guess my question would be, why is that one particular parcel different than other areas such as the Palms? That this would be, this is currently with the Palms would be residential.
I believe Palms 2 does not allow short-term rentals.
Correct, Palms 1 does.
Right.
So does Ikulu.
Brian, it's a good question. I don't know why this one was singled out.
Planning, could you maybe tell us why?
I would bet it's the zoning or the community plan no, the community plan designation was that. I think it's the underlying zoning. But I would need to look more into that. And since it's 9 o'clock, let's do it next week.
Yeah, Daniel objects because he feels like we're cramming things in at a really late hour.
So we didn't address 7 and we didn't address 9.
We have a motion for number 9, so do we need more for clarification?
Can we check the underlying zoning? And if we can figure that out, if it's zoned, then we can vote on it.
On the zoning map, it's hard to read though. It does say it is hotel zoning. I just want to confirm that because sometimes the layers get a little messed up.
Next week?
Yeah.
Okay, so do you want to withdraw your motion and then, okay. Is there, let's see, we still have to vote on it. Any objections to deferring the, which one is this again? This is number 9? No, okay, so deferring number 9. So we are deferring number 7 and number 9, because we didn't start number, if we close now, it's 9 o'clock, but we did do number 8. Okay, so we're done with Wailea for now, but Jackie has something for us.
Yeah, this is just other business. July 5th, we're taking a break. We're not going to have a meeting on July 5th, so you get a 1-week break, July 5th. But come back the following week, only 1 week, okay? So just July 5th, and then we'll resume. Well, we'll see you next week and all through June, but July 5th is the 1-week break. Okay, thanks.
Wait, Cody?
Rob, I don't remember doing, Chairman. I don't remember doing number 8.
Can you say it again?
Number 8, Beach Park. Everett moved. Brian second. All were in favor.
Okay, I object to that. What was the, what was it? What was the motion?
From open space to park.
Okay, no, yeah. I want to keep it open space.
So we can note the objection in the notes, but yeah. Okay, Is there anything else you had? No? Okay. Okay, so next time we are going to finish these 2 remaining items in, actually 3. Yeah, Wailea 670, Kaukahi Street, which is, that's Makali'i, by the way, and Polo Beach. And then we have McKenna.
Sorry, to be clear, Vice Chair Kanahele also said he wasn't aware of any beach park motion and that he missed that too. This is what happens when we rush. So he's in the same boat as Cody. He wasn't aware that that was a motion that was being made.
Okay. And then we will also hopefully hear a new proposal from Rory for the Kihimauka. And closing the meeting at 9:03 p.m.